everyone, welcome back to our channel. In this platform, mainly we address certain issues, discuss some aspects, and today we want to put on a spotlight the issues regarding children, ensuring their rights and social protection and at all levels of the society. And to help us with that, to dive into more in a process, we invited the special guest, UNICEF Representative in Uzbekistan, Mr. Sascha Graumann. Welcome, Mr. Graumann. As we know, ensuring the social security of the children is something the whole world is striving for. We see that the world is coming together. There are certain challenges, and we see that. But if we can highlight 3 or 4 main reasons, what would that be?
Yeah. Look, I mean, the social protection of children is first of all a right that every child has. It's important, it's in the Convention on the Rights of the Child. It's important to understand what we are talking about in terms of social protection. It is clear that certain children grow up in disadvantaged family situations, in poverty. And that is, of course, affecting children negatively and their development negatively, and that is something that needs to be addressed, and children have a right for that to be addressed. It's important for a number of reasons. I mean, for individual reasons, for the child, for its upbringing, but also for society as a whole. We know that children that come from low-income families are doing worse at school, for instance, because they don't have the environment at home that is required to nurture learning and things like that. We know that parenting skills are a problem for children from low-income families. I mean, parents are under stress because of economic hardships, and that negatively affects their upbringing. It has a negative impact on nutrition. We know that children from poorer households, they grow up less healthy. So you have all these factors where a strong social protection system can actually impact. And how does it need to look like? And there's generally a long positive tradition in Uzbekistan in terms of social solidarity, the entire Mahala system. I mean, these types of things are social solidarity systems that function. And Uzbekistan also is supposed to put in place a good system of social benefits. You have childcare allowance for mothers with children under 2. You have a family allowance for families with children up to 14. There's a disability allowance. There are also, of course, provisions for children that are deprived of parental care. They have being taken care of in residential care institutions. But what's even more important, you have a system of patronat, where children are being taken care of. That's, I think, a very good element because it provides an opportunity for children to grow up in a family environment. And it also is very much in line with the idea of deinstitutionalizing children, getting them out of residential care institutions. So you have a lot of these systems in place. There are gaps in the current systems that still need to be addressed.
Speaking of the gaps, having in that case unified strategy, certain approach that could ensure the social protection system, I mean making it more centralized. As the UNICEF representative, how do you see this strategy? Is there some programs that UNICEF and government has been collaborating recently?
We always look at 2 elements here. One thing is social benefits. Clearly there needs to be monetary support to make sure children grow up in an environment where all these things are in place. So that's one important element. The other element is that of social services. So there need to be a strong system of social work, for instance, which is something we have been working on together with the government. These are the types of programs you need in order to ensure a proper family environment for the child, where the child can grow up well supported.
Sometimes people, I mean, those who are in need for help, sometimes basically don't have an access to some organizations, or don't know where to apply, how to apply. What do you think? What is the main issue here?
I think it's a really important point that you're making here. It's something that we actually found as well. We know that these benefits I was talking about, there are much more families are eligible to it than those who actually receive those benefits. And you are right, sometimes it is that families don't know, sometimes because there's not sufficient funding available. What we found is actually that up to 75% of those families who would actually be eligible to some benefit in terms of their child care don't receive it.
Don't you think that keeping a track of evidence of families that need care could be a key factor in bettering the whole situation?
I think it's an excellent point, and I think that's part of what we are trying to address together with the Ministry of Finance
Without
right
the
now.
track, you can't find out.
Exactly, you don't know who actually needs support and how they have gotten the support and didn't they receive it. That's part of the reason why many people right now don't receive the benefits that they're actually entitled to, because it's difficult to track. And that's something the government is aware of. And what we are doing now, for instance, we have a pilot undertaking with the Ministry of Finance, a single registry system in the Sirdarya region, where basically this problem that you mentioned, that families sometimes don't know where to get the benefits, how to apply for that, that is going to be resolved in that system. We are at the end almost of the piloting of that, and makes it easier for families to apply. They immediately are going to know if they get a benefit and how it is being distributed. The pilot in the Sirdarya region is coming to an end, and we are very glad that the World Bank is planning to upscale then this model throughout the country so that this is available everywhere. And that will be a big step forward in making sure all these families who are actually entitled to receive benefits for their children will actually get those. The other element of what you mentioned in terms of keeping track, is social work. Right now, a great initiative, we have heard that the Prosecutor General's office has requested the early release of some of the incarcerated children from prison, and it's going to court next week. We are very glad to hear that, because prison facilities are breeding spots for the virus. So they have agreed to release, or they are discussing with the court, the release of some of these children. Now, these types of children, they do need support. That's what a social work system is going to provide you. There are social workers who are specialized, and we have trained a lot of social workers over the last years. We have put in that training course in the university, a degree program, which basically then exactly tracks and supports those families, and especially these types of children who need that support. And we see the effect that it has in terms of making sure that these children grow up in adults that can take care of themselves very well.
So speaking of the advantage that child's benefits that can help us, what are your views on that matter?
Yeah, so I think the advantage clearly is that on the one hand, on the individual level for the child, we know that a child that grows up there, you have like of a foundation, a guaranteed minimum source of income for the family with the child, grows up in a much more secure environment. The other thing is, it also has significant benefits for society as a whole. Uzbekistan is a very interesting point in its demographic development. In around 2030, Uzbekistan will have its peak labor force. So it means it has the largest labor force it has ever had. It will go down afterwards, which has significant implications. If you invest at the right moment in the education of your children, then when you reach that peak labor force, you basically have a much higher productivity, because they are well educated. And we have seen that in many countries. We have seen, like South Korea is a great example on that. They have done that. When they basically were at that point of coming to their demographic dividend, they were able to reap that demographic dividend because they heavily invested in health and education. So that's one piece. I mean, the other thing what one needs to think about is the entire structure of the social benefits that exist right now. What we actually advocate for is what we call a universal child benefit. That is much easier to administer. And we are in discussions with the government. We have made proposals how that can be gradually introduced, because of course I mean, it's a fiscal question. The question is, I mean, can you afford these types of systems? And we need to recognize that. But there are ways of gradually introducing these types of systems that would make sure, as Uzbekistan had, there was a universal benefit for children, which we think is a better thing to do, which has to do with, a benefit that is universal, that the child receives because it is a child, would also be much cheaper to administer. You can always decide to put all the money in administering a very complicated, sophisticated system, or if you actually provide a almost near universal benefit. And these are discussions we're having right now. We believe that the introduction of the single registry will be an important step forward. We are glad that the government has agreed to that. And that's a good cooperation that's going on. And I think from there we can take this definitely further. The other element, I think, which is important where we're working on is in terms of the services. And that's something, I mean, there are certain groups of children who are particularly vulnerable that we also see again now that we have the entire situation with the pandemic. I mean, children of migrant workers, children that have been released from closed educational facilities or from penitentiary facilities. There are children that are particularly at risk and that need to be particularly supported, and where families and parents are challenged. And there you need a strong system of social workers. And there we have also seen some progress. Over the last year, together with the government, we introduced a social work system, a social work course in the university, for instance. A universal child benefit would be a great step to at least gradually introduce that. Over time, I think it's fiscally affordable. Over time to introduce a benefit like that.
It's in fact, some may say that it's a controversial opinion, like if parents have a child's benefits, they might be in future become dependent.
I think that's a very interesting point, because it's a very popular misconception that you would create that dependency. Of course, if you have benefits that are immediately taken away the moment you get into a job, like the mother gets a job, it loses the childcare benefit. So of course, then, I mean, especially then if you're offered jobs that are very low paid, I mean, you make a choice. Why should you if you then lose the benefit? That's one of the reasons why we say, I mean, introduce them near universally. Because if it's not immediately taken away, then the family has some sort of security. We say, okay, fine, let's go, let's look for a job, we supplement our income, and we are not being immediately taken away what we have. Like things, the great program that Uzbekistan has, Every Family an Entrepreneur. We know that families become much more entrepreneurial if they have some sort of security. If you can basically afford to take a higher entrepreneurial risk, because you can it's always something to fall back on. Then they engage in things like that. The opposite is taking place if you lose these benefits, and if you always need to be afraid of losing that. Like right now, sometimes these benefits are being handed out for 6 months and then they rotate to another family. So you're always in the risk of losing these benefits. You're not going to take a risk, And especially in an environment where you have shocks like what we see right now with the pandemic and all of that, families start getting into negative coping strategies. Coping strategies that are depleting their resources, their assets, they're not going to invest. So the dependency is not created by the benefit. The dependency is created by the way that benefit is constructed. That's one of the reasons why these universal benefits are much more effective. Because families say, okay, fine, and we are not going to lose it, and we are not going to become dependent on that. You see it, I mean, the evidence is very clear. They're becoming more risk-taking, which is good. What want to see, they want to invest, they want to find new sources of income.
Thank you, Mr. Graumann. We remind you that we had a special guest, UNICEF representative in Uzbekistan, Sascha Graumann. Stay tuned to our channel, stay safe, and take care of yourself.